In this series of videos, we're going to learn how to create a table using HTML and CSS. And ultimately, this is going to be our goal for our end product, is creating this tennis singles rankings as of this point in time. This is how things look on the tennis scene. So to get started, the easiest way to think about tables is, if you're familiar with Excel, and I'm going to use this exact example here just on the men's single side, we have in Excel, this is comfortable to most people, we have what we think of as rows, so rows, and we also have columns. And when we're laying out tabular data, we can do things in Excel like, here's a heading, for example, so we can merge and center it so it goes across the center here. We can we're going to want to highlight these. We can make it bold. We can, let's see, we might want to center this information. We might want to, let's see, not have all of these men's repeating itself. So maybe we will merge that data. Yes, I want to merge it. I'm going to align it to the middle, so men's is in the middle. I might want to center all of these things here. There we go. And these kinds of things. So this is what we're going to be doing. We want to think about, and I'm trying to lay this out exactly the way I want you to sort of envision our table that we're going to create. All we're doing is we're creating rows and columns, and then we'll perhaps merge some columns. We will merge some cells, and we will create these rows and columns with our headings and with our data. So that's our goal, and let's see how we go about doing all of that. All right, so now we have some kind of idea of what we're trying to build. Let's go ahead and build it. So the first thing I'm going to do is build the table, and then we'll make it pretty. So let's get the concept figured out first. All right. So the first thing we need to do is create that Excel looking sheet, or create we're going to call it a table. And so our tag is an opening and closing table, which by itself, if I save this and now refresh our page, nothing is happening yet. It's just setting up telling the browser, okay, we're going to put in a table here. And now we have to define the tables and rows and the cells. And so this is where it can get a little daunting, because we have so many opening and closing tags, but that's part of the ball game. All right, so the first thing we want to do is create, we're going to create a row that has, let's just create a row, and let's just look at what we were trying to build here. So this was our example, and the first thing we're going to do is build this row that has tennis singles rankings on it. So we'll do just that. We'll put TR, says I'm going to create a row, and then in that row I'm going to create a cell, and that cell is going to have tennis singles rankings was what it said. Okay, so I'm going to save that real quick and take a peek and see what we've got. All right, so we have, doesn't look like a whole lot yet, but it'll start to build on itself. So TD is table data, so that is what we use to define a cell. So we've defined a row, one row with a single cell that we've put table data into. Okay, so now let's look at the next row. We're going to create this row here. We're going to create a row that has men's. We'll merge this later. We saw merge a little earlier, but let's just create a row that has men's. We have to do the title first. Sorry. So we'll do tour, ranking, player, and points. So let's build that row next. That's 1, 2, 3, 4 cells that we need to create. So we're creating a new row, TR. Oops, not TF. TR. And in a TR, we're creating 4 cells, TD, one that has tour, one that has TD rankings. Okay, another one that has TD. It had, we gotta get a typing fingers things, player, and then TD, we had one that had points. So I'm going to save that, Control S, and then refresh it. And now we're starting to see something. So things are getting a little bit, we've got some rows, some cells, 2 rows and 2 cells. All right, we're going to clean this up. We're just going to keep building on this concept. So we've got 2 rows with opening and closing TR tags, and within that row we have a TD, and then we have another TR that has several TDs. All right, so now we're going to create a row that has the data in it. So I'm going to create a row that has men's, 1, Roger Federer, and his points. So we'll get that one done next. So I'm going to create a new row, TR. Okay, and in that TR, I need to create a TD that has men's. Okay, and then, oops, don't fix it for me. There we go. Another TD that has 1, because Roger Federer is currently number 1. TD, Roger Federer, and then another TD, and then 10,060. So Control S, and let's look and see what we've got. All right, so we can sort of start to see that this tabular format is taking place. Things are starting to get set up into rows and columns. All right, so I'm going to put this video on hold real quick and fill in the rest of that data so you don't have to see me filling in all those names and rankings and points. So I will be right back. All right, so all I did since I put this video on pause was, well, first of all, I just combined the TDs all on one row because it takes up less real estate that way. It's still easy enough to read. And then I added lots more lines of TRs. It's exactly the same thing. It's just data. So where we left off last was I had a men's column, a men's row with the number 1 ranking, and then Roger Federer, and then the points. I just copied and pasted pretty much and added the new data for men's 2 and Rafael Nadal, and then the points, and it's so on until I had 5 columns, 1 through 5 for the men, and 5 columns 1 through 5 for the women with their associated names and points. So nothing new there, except it's just a little bit easier to read, and then I add more data for visual. And so now things are looking a little bit more tabular, and we're looking like we have that spreadsheet type appearance, that tabular type data. All right, so let's do some more work with this. So I think the next thing I'm going to do is show you well, let's see, let's make this an H1 just to make it stand out a little bit more. And so I'm going to make tennis rankings an H1. Okay, so that's going to make that a little bolder. Okay, let's see what we can do to make this line bolder, because that's sort of header information, right? So header being the key word. So we're going to change this particular row. Instead of TD for table data, we're going to change it to H's. So I'm going to make all of this H's. And just by definition then, let's see what will happen. So if I make these all H's, I have to make sure I open and close with the same H. And continue on down the chain. So that row is now made up of THs, table headers, instead of TDs. Now if I save that, let's see what that does to my page. So now, by virtue of it being a table header, it's automatically going to center and bold the data that's in the THs. So that's appropriate. We've got some lining up problems here, so we'll fix all of that, and we'll start working on that sort of thing next. So now let's make this look a little bit more professional. We've got the basic structure done, but we want to decorate it so it looks a little cleaner. So remember, when we do that, we have our styles page. So I've already linked a styles page. If I see my styles page, it is currently blank because I was anticipating we were going to do some things to it. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is, if you remember from our example, we had this nice tennis background. So I'm going to apply that to the body first of all. And so that will be tag body. And we're going to do a background image. I'm going to do a URL. And in this same folder, I have a, let me just see, I don't trust myself here. I'm going to verify. in this folder, I have a file called tennis_court.jpg. So perfect, that's what I'm going to put in. tennis_court.jpg. And I'll put a semicolon after that. And then what else are we going to add? We'll do a background size cover. So we'll have it cover the entire viewport. And we'll say background attachment. Where's my background? Background. Oh, I have to spell it right. CK ground attachment. We're going to fix it to the center there. All right, so that should, let's see what happens. If I do that, then I get that pretty background. All right, so obviously this text needs some work. We need some work to make that show up. So let's see what else is next. All right, so for the table then, I'm going to give the table, let's see, I think what we're going to do is do a border, 2 pixels, yellow, solid. Let's see what that does and why you're bringing that to our attention. Okay, so that puts a border around all of the table. That's fine. Let's also put a border around all of our TH and our TD. It should be commas, not space. TH and TD. Let's see what happens if I do that. So now I'm getting a border around the outside, and each of those tables and rows, or table headers and table rows, TDs are getting that. I like that, except here's a problem. This this particular I guess we did it as a TD, is only taking up one TD compared to the others. So similar to doing that merge, we want to kind of do that cell merge so that we can merge this single TD over all of these columns. So let's see how we can do that. All right, so that is this row, and that is this TD. So this TD is currently taking up one column. We want it to take up 1, 2, 3, 4 columns. So what we can do is in this TD tag, we can give it an attribute called column span, call span, equals, and define how many columns we want it to take up. So now let's see what happens. Okay, it's looking better. So now at least our table, description is merged or is extending across all of my rows, all of my columns. So that's looking better. All right, but we still got some work to do, don't we? So I think what I'm going to do is do a little bit of work on that table to make it line up on my page a little bit better. I'm going to do a margin 100 pixels from the top, set it off the top. I might do 0 pixels from, wait, I'm not doing this right. 0 pixels from the top, right, left, and then bottom. Okay, top, right, top 100 pixels, right 0 pixels, bottom 0 pixels, and then 0 pixels or 200 pixels from the left. So we'll just move it over a little bit and see what that does. Okay, that's looking better. And why did I not do margin auto? I could have done margin auto, which would center this this table in the center of the viewport, but I didn't, because if I do that, I don't line it up nicely on my my tennis ball here. So I did this intentionally with that kind of thing in mind. So you could do margin auto, but in this case, I wanted to position it in exactly 200 pixels from the left of the viewport, so it would fall specifically on this on the speak, Kirsten. Here, let me just show it to you this way. So by the time I'm said and done, my tennis ball is in such a location that it's still easy to read my text, but it's kind of slightly off center. So if I just margin auto it, it'll just put the table in the center, which potentially puts the data over the tennis ball and made it harder to read. So that was my design choice there and why I chose to do it that way. All right, so let's continue on. I think the other thing that I wanted to do was I wanted to make my width of my table 80%. Okay, so that makes that span across a little bit nicer. There we go. So you can see that that layout's getting a little bit cleaner. All right, so what's next? Well, let's see. We've got this spanned across the, let's make it a little bit more readable now, shall we? So let's take our, let's take our table header, which is, let's see, what did I want to do? Let's do table header TD. Let's make those, let's give those a padding, 10 pixels, and text align center. Okay, let's see what that does. So now with the padding, I'm putting a 10 pixel padding around the content, so it pushes the text off of those edges a little bit. And then of course text center is doing, did I do text center? It should be text align center. I need to run that through the validator, don't I? Text align center, there we go. Even though it worked, that doesn't make it right. Now my text is getting aligned in the center. That's looking better. So we're getting cleaned up a little bit. What else shall we do? Well, we should make a different background color because that's kind of hard to read. So let's make, let's go to our TD. Let's see, I'll start with the table header, which is this text across the top. And, well, I'm even going to do a little different. Let's do this. I'm going to work on these rows first. So the first row, I'm going to use this nth child. And I'm going to do an even. Let me just type it out and then I'll show you what I'm doing if it's not already intuitive. So the evens, we're going to do a background color of, I came up with a 2B 4E2, oops, I did that wrong. This is E8, E8, E8. And then for a TR nth child odd, we're going to use a background color of, what did I do? White. Okay, so let's see how that looks. What on earth is that doing? Okay, so I think you're kind of seeing what's going on here. With this nth child, we can use, it's a pseudo class is what that's called because we've got this colon. All even rows will receive this background color and all odd rows, and we can use those words even and odd. Even will start off with 0, just like if you were doing an array in programming, and odd is going to start off with 1. So all even rows will be this light gray and all odd rows will be white. So that's looking a little bit better. All right. What else can we do? Well, let's look at our example. So then it looks like this makes sense. Our table heading looks like it's a different color. So let's do that. So our table heading had a background color in that example of 2B4E2D. And let's see what happens there. Okay, so now we're getting this dark green. So that's looking better. Okay, what I want to address next is the fact that we've got these. So we did this merge across the top here, right? Let's, I'm just kind of hesitating because that's hard. This is hard to read. So maybe we should also do a color of white. Okay, let's see how that goes. All right, is that looking better? Yeah, that's looking better. Okay, we did this column span across the top here. And if you look at the example, we also have a row span across the side here. So this men's is extending down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows, similar to how we did the columns extending over 1, 2, 3, 4 columns. So now we can apply a table, a row span to this men's column or to this men's TD, and the same thing with the women's. So let's just see that in action because a lot of words, I don't understand what you said. All right, so let's look at, we're going to take our first men's TD, which is right here. And we're going to say to extend that, just like we did column span, we're going to do a row span equal to, and we want to equal to 5, right? Because we want the men's to extend down 5, and we're going to do the same thing to the women's. Well, that's not really, we're not really done yet, because see what happens? This men's came over. So what we need to do is we have to make sure, if we're going to do this, that our total TDs still equal 4, because now we've added another TD in essence. So my point here is that now that we're asking this men's TD to extend down 5 rows, we need to eliminate those TDs in those associated rows. So once I delete these TDs in the men's, I've really accommodated for those that I just deleted with this row span 5. So by doing a row span 5, it's kind of like having a TD here and a TD here and a TD here, but I don't want to define that because now I'm defining extras, right? Which is why we have this weird layout here. So now, by doing it this way, men's is taking up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 columns, or 5 rows, excuse me, and we're all centered. So let's do the same thing for the women's. So again, I want this first women's TD to extend down row span 5 rows, which means I can eliminate the definition for the other 4 rows because I'm replacing it with the row span definition above. And so now, one more, I should have those taken care of. So you have to be careful with tables that you are making sure you allocate the correct amount of TDs with your columns when you do this kind of thing. And that's where sometimes it gets kind of weird. But the borders are nice because that helps us see what we're doing. All right, we're almost there. So the last thing that well, there's, I guess, 2 more things I want to add. So we noticed that in our example anyway, that we're almost there with 2 exceptions. One is the men's and women's row spans that we just set up seems to have the same setting as our table heading row. And also it looks like this table is a little bit see-through. So once we add those 2 features, I think we're going to be exactly the same. So very simple, since we've already defined a style definition for this header, which was, let's see, which one was that? That was the one where we did table. Okay, so this is that definition here, right? No, it's right here, table header. All right, so what can we do to create, well, why don't we just give it a class? So here is our definition for our header, our style definition for our header, and we just want to do the same thing for these 2. So let's create a class for that TD. Let's say we have a row span of 5, and let's give it a class of sidebar. Okay, and we'll do the same thing for our women down here. Ideally, there we go. And then we'll go down to our women's call span, and we'll do the same thing. We'll give it a class of sidebar. Okay, save that. And then I can also do a comma class sidebar. So that should take care of that particular issue, sure enough. Now we've got the same thing going on there. And the only thing left in is to make our table a little bit transparent. And that's very easy to do. What we'll do is we'll go into our table heading. We'll do it in this one, so it'll apply to everything. And we'll give it opacity. Remember, opacity is the transparency. So it's a value from either 1, which makes it the way it looks now, and 0, completely transparent. So let's go 0.85, so it's kind of transparent. Not very, but a little bit. And you can play with that a little bit to make sure that that matches the colors that you want. In other words, if I had done 35, then I can see that it's going to be really transparent. Ooh, that's too much. And so just play with the numbers and find the one that you like the best. And then remember that 1 would be if we did 1, which doesn't make sense, but that's not transparent at all. So your values are between 0 and 1. And I chose 0.85 because I felt that was a good balance between the 2. So that is creating tables. We've done a lot in this video. We've created our table. We needed to make sure that we first created a tag saying we're going to open and close a table. We had to create rows, and within each row then we created whether we're making some TDs, some table data, or a table header. We had to make sure we open and close those TDs and TRs appropriately. So we had our opening and closing TDs or THs or whichever it was. We also did this column span where we could extend a single cell across multiple columns. And then we also did a row span where we had a single cell that extended down multiple rows. Then we had to make sure that the rows that particular TD was extending past did not have so we left the TD blank for that. We allowed for the fact that there's only 3 definitions for TD here because this one will incorporate the 4th because it's extending down, we're merging. And then we applied some coloring, some different colors and styles to our tables. So that is tables.